Our topic for today is the idea of how teaching is like gardening, something that we may not have had a chance to think about before.
So welcome everybody. I would normally for this presentation be wearing my gardening gear, but today is Show Your College Colors Day, so I'm wearing my FAU colors with pride. So I am here from the Daily campus. Welcome to today's professional development session.
And I am presenting here from the Boca campus. And so in all aspects of the word, we want to welcome you to our virtual professional development today, because we're presenting from two campuses, and we have Kathy representing the Jupiter campus with us. So it definitely is virtual in all respects of the word. So
go ahead.
You may start.
Okay, so like Judy was saying, our first objective today is to compare teaching and gardening. What are the similarities between these two processes?
And we're going to be thinking about the process of change as both a teaching and a learning tool. There's change taking place all the time. How can we use it to our benefit?
And then we are going to be talking about how to create conditions for change and growth in our garden, in our classroom.
And then giving some serious thought to the impact of time on that component of change and growth. So we're going to be making a full circle. So teaching definitely is not a random act. It truly is an investment.
Mm-hmm. So when we see a beautiful garden and we see the way flower beds and grass are laid out, we see that someone actually planned the layout for that garden with intent. The same happens with our classroom.
And that intent has to be followed up with discipline. In order to have a successful garden, we need to be conscientious and deliberate about taking care of it. Otherwise, it'll either drown or get parched, or there won't be anything left of it. And likewise for our classroom.
Absolutely. So that takes us to our next ingredient, or to our next component, which is taking care of your garden with tender, loving care, right? Always being there with your students to support them and to show that you really care.
And so here's something that we don't often think about in terms of either teaching or gardening, but it truly is an important element of both, the concept of time.
Yes, and before we move on, I wanted to say something that I thought about this morning.
Oh, no.
Teaching is also an investment for your students. So you're not going to be the only one investing time, effort, and resources. For your students to flourish, they need to actually come on board with you. So I thought this morning that it would be a good idea for us to start thinking about ways to bring our students on board so they actually make the choice to invest and reinvest in their own learning. So
yeah.
Investment for both.
Yeah, and to recognize that they have to be willing to make that commitment as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So one of the huge factors that we typically don't think about is the idea of change. Mm-hmm. It's an important piece of it.
Yeah, and I know you have lots of experience both as a gardener and as a teacher. So Judy, how does your garden change?
Well, it's interesting because to go and look at it from day to day, I don't really see or notice the changes unless there's a bud and it opens the next day. And yet to think about it over time, all of a sudden those little plants have grown and they've got extra leaves, or they're budding out or producing the fruit. So it's the change is not something that we are conscious of on a daily basis.
But definitely at the end, you will see a transformation, right?
Yes. And so what's your background in composting, Mary?
Well, my dad has always loved composting, and he taught me the basis of it. So composting is basically about throwing food scraps and then layering them, and then having the right mixture, and not only of ingredients, but from time to time coming into the compost pail and mixing up ingredients. So at the very end, those separate parts, those scraps, will turn into nutrient-rich soil. So whatever comes in doesn't really have too much to do with what comes out. There is a process where that turns into this nutrient-rich soil for your garden to grow.
Yeah, so we put various components into that compost bin and let it kind of stew, turn it over, and what we get out is something completely different than what we put in, and yet it's something valuable and rich, and it supports the whole process.
Yeah, and I like to think of the idea that a student who comes in to my classroom at the beginning of the term is not the same person that will come out of the experience at the very end of term. So there is deep transformation in that period of time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of context of why this quote is here. This is actually from my favorite book, from Dr. Seuss, and it also comes from a movie the book was made into. The book and the movie are the Lorax. So in the story, towards the end of the story, there's a little boy who's trying to save the environment. He's trying to save the trough for the trees. And the only thing that he has left is a seed. So he asks the question, what can I do? I'm just a boy. And then he's told that he's not just a boy, the same way a seed is not a seed, because it's not actually about what it is about what it can become. So we're talking about transformation, and in that context, we will look at our students as our seeds. So our garden begins and ends with our students.
And so we talked earlier about investing in our garden and that as well as in our classrooms. And so that indicates an investment in the transition process. Mm-hmm. So that change comes about because of the conditions that we provide that allow our students to reach their full potential, their ability to own the knowledge that they are getting and to direct their own learning experiences.
Absolutely. So this is about building a classroom environment where students are fully invested in their learning. And that translates into students that will take that learning with them and be empowered beyond the classroom to continue learning, to continue growing.
So what are some of the conditions? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. What are some of the conditions that make that happen?
Well, I would tend to think that it all begins with the foundations, right? So the soil where our garden gets their nutrients is the foundation. In this case, we're going to think of soil as how do I challenge my students? How do I stretch them? How do I bring in assignments that will meet them where they are and will meet them where I want them to be? So the key word here is flexibility. Not every plant in your garden is like the rest of the plants. So as you think of your students, try to remember what they each bring into the mixture and how you can, like you do with composting, put that together to create the foundations to push your students to the next level. So that will be the challenging parts of it.
And so in my garden, water is a critical element, right amount, not too much, not too little. In the classroom, we can relate that to the clarity of what we are doing. Exactly what is it I'm asking my students to do, and how clear am I about what it is I want them to do, how they are going to identify exactly what the expectation is. So it has to be, as with the water, not too much, not too little, and just the right amount for them to be able to take that and grow with it.
Yes, and water and temperature are related because water provides the what and the temperature provides the why. So it is important to give our students a context. Why am I being asked to do this? How is this worth my time, my effort? So think about that as relevance that makes our students go for it and actually want to do what you're asking them to do.
Yeah, so the why is as key as the what, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So the next item that I need definitely in my garden is the sunshine. They need that the things that they get from that, as well as my students need the content and delivered in such a way that they are going to make those connections to, again, what it is we're wanting them to do and why it's important for them. So we want to think about the variety in the way that we deliver the content and the capability of the student to make those important connections.
And last is definitely how you show your commitment to your students. And here I was thinking about if you want fully invested students, gardening has to be done as a partnership. So we're talking about taking risks, we're talking about providing the foundations for deep inquiry, for knowledge that is transferable. And this, like composting, is a very messy process.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it probably won't be linear and it won't be necessarily clear or easy all the time, but by being there and by showing your students that you are willing to take those risks, then you will definitely create the environment where they will feel safe.
So it looks like there's a lot involved on both parts, both the teacher and the students.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I feel that something is missing though. I think there's an extra ingredient that is escaping us somehow.
Okay, and we're going to get back to that in a moment. We're going to take a moment to look at the Google slide and see what we can share about that.
Okay.
Oh, it's. Whew, you go. So the question on here, we're going to ask you to go into one of them and put your name on and talk about what strategies that you have used in order to grow your students. you want to share what you've got up there?
Sure. In our department, we have international students who come here to learn English. They're either university-bound students, about 50%, and the other 50% are professionals who are here for a term or two, and then they go back to their own countries to continue their profession.
Fascinating.
So obviously, our classes are very interactive, but we'd like to give them the opportunity to teach. We have every Thursday, we have a brown bag seminar. They can eat lunch in the classroom, and one of them gets up and teaches them. It's very informal.
Excellent. And do you post the topics ahead?
Yes, we have them sign up ahead for topics. Sometimes they bring in materials they want to use. They might use Kahoot. They might create like a Kahoot quiz and then start off that way. But there are different structures.
Yeah, Kahoots are great tools to use.
Yeah.
And
we also give them more concrete opportunities to interact in English rather than just saying, okay, go out and practice your English.
yeah,
We arrange different activities. We invite professors to come in, invite FAU students to come to speak with them directly. We use journaling, and that's related to using discussion boards and blogs so they can become more fluent. We're not concerned with their grammar at that, in those kinds of activities. We just want them to develop fluency.
that's a good thing. Our grammar is difficult for those of us who have been brought up in it, let alone for someone who's a second. All right, excellent. And Victoria's background is through the continuing ed program here on campus. So it's a slightly different perspective than most of who we think about as being on the campus. Kathy, you're up. Is she, I think you can speak, my dear.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's great to see you all up there. I'm so excited that you're doing this virtually. It's awesome.
It is, isn't it?
It really, really is. You're so brave. I'm so excited. I was thinking the same, that, like a tomato or an orchid, sometimes you put that extra stick on it and help them to grow in the right direction, give them that support. And depending on the need, I have a heart for international students as well. Providing extra resources for them, giving them conference, personal time. With international students, a student buddy or a student coach is a really good way to go a lot of times.
Excellent.
And then also some plants just don't thrive in particular climates, like lilacs can't grow down here. They just can't. And palm trees, you've got to provide a really special environment if they're going to grow up north. So if something's not a good fit, like if somebody just chooses not to take another one of my courses, or if they really prefer face-to-face, or they want a different major or something, supporting their decisions as opposed to taking it personally. It's not a rejection. It's just, they might be a lilac in Florida.
Yeah, it all has to do with the direction that they need to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like the idea of tying the stakes up for our tomatoes or for the orchids, providing that scaffolding for our students.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you. Mary, any comments about either of these?
Yeah, I have a slide somewhere. I don't see it though.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I did write something.
All right. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay, so I was thinking about the right amount of scaffolding, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to challenge them, but we don't want to make it too hard. We don't want to make it too easy. We want to find the right balance, and we also want to provide the right level of scaffolding. So identifying those underlying skills and background knowledge that will allow our students to reach the outer levels of where they are now is really important to me. And then providing multiple opportunities to engage with the big task at hand, but at the same time with those smaller portions or skills that they need to implement in order to take care of the big task. So practice that engages them in multiple ways, that is directed, and I see it as having this on the side menu of options where we would provide tutorials, explanations, extra support for those foundational skills. So we will be tackling both and allowing them to think big while getting the support for the smaller chunks that they need to develop too.
That's excellent. I like the on the side menu. Bit of extra over here if there's if you need a little bit of the tomato sauce.
Yeah, and making it sure that it's, you know, it's their choice. It's there if they want to use it. I'm here if you think you want to partner with me. So giving them the option to do it or not. And the other day I'm taking a class and the teacher provided prompts, but then I came up with my own prompts. So I wrote to her and I asked her if I could answer my very own prompt instead. And she said yes. She was very flexible. She accepted what I wanted to do. So I was more engaged and more committed because I was answering the questions I wanted to answer. So it's just something that happened to me last week that I wanted to comment on.
And that's another C word that we could add in there. It probably fits in with one of them that we had, because giving students choice, making them active participants in the learning process.
Absolutely. So the choice would be like when you like your food, your plant food, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we got one more ingredient.
Yeah.
I can jump back in too for a second. Hey, I was thinking too, what Mary was saying about giving the feedback and the multiple opportunities. That's really important in the lower stakes, frequent assessment and feedback. And that to me is a little bit like keeping the bugs off of your plants too.
Yeah.
You know, where you're checking all the time and making sure that they're not, it's like if you're learning a language, check in every once in a while and make sure your pronunciation is right, your understanding right, and that helps you to continue to grow as well.
Yeah.
What a great comment. Thank you, Kathy.
And making sure our little plants aren't getting sidetracked in another direction.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Some good interactivity and exchange there. And so we shared our ideas, our thoughts about that, and did some talking about the various components that we added to it. So what was the other piece you were thinking about, Mary?
Well, I know there's something missing here, but I just can't wrap my head around what it is. Let your course evolve as time goes by. So I think time is the other key ingredient. And I also think you have an anecdote to share with us, right?
Yes, I do. As a gardener, and one who moved here from living up, not way north, but further north than here, I had to realize that the seasons for growing things in Florida are completely different than they are in other places. I had to reevaluate and tweak things as far as what I put in when. And so along those same lines, over a period of time through the courses, you change things up because you want to make it a more effective event for your students. We work with a number of professors through here and help them develop their courses and give them best practices and research-based components for making an effective course. And we have several of them that are more than happy to share their spot reports with us. And I have a couple of comments from one that I would like to share with you. Now let me get to where this is from a course that has been taught fully online. I think it's in its at least the third semester, if not the fourth one. And so each time it's been taught, they're based on some of the comments and some of the feedback, the course has changed a little bit. So I've got a couple of comments. The opportunity to add an item that was not extra credit, but an actual grade for assessments that test our growth. Now, isn't that interesting that a student would recognize that there were things taking place in the course to test their growth, for them to recognize that whole self-assessment piece? And that's a key point. There were a number of other excellent comments in this as well. A teacher that goes above and beyond, a teacher that uses their videos to explain and completely make sure that the students get it. Commented about the fact that this teacher repeats things in different ways in order to make sure that they're all involved. The email contact with the students. There are just a number of things that the students mentioned through the spots, and that's just one of the things that is an indication of a teacher who is willing to step out of their comfort zone and take some of those risks and change up what they are doing in order to make it a more effective course for the teachers. And this has been over time. This is over, as I said, at least 3 semesters, I think 4 now. So, so that's a really valuable piece, and it speaks well for the teacher, certainly.
Yeah, and I love how the student talked about growth.
Yes.
I love how you tied it up with taking risks and partnering with your students, because definitely there has to be room for trying things out, for making mistakes, for making changes. So it is messy, and as it is messy and as you tweak things, you have to give yourself the opportunity to reflect about what you're doing. So the seasons change, and you change, and your students change with you.
I'd like to jump in too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
I read your comments, and I think it's really, really important. Go ahead.
Just as you're talking about seasons, certainly this change over to Canvas as our new LMS. Maybe I did a spoiler alert for you guys, but some people might feel like it's a hurricane coming through. But it certainly is a new thing. That's a new season for us. A new, and it's nice to have it all, that we're all in it together.
Yeah, a new way of doing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try out new tools, a new year. It's an opportunity, definitely.
And a chance for us to step again out of our comfort zone and take those risks that we need to take, and then hope, as we know, in a year's time we'll look back and say, oh, that was easy.
Yes.
So we have some comments from Sir Ken Robinson, and he is a really an advocate of creativity in education, and the advocate of allowing students to grow and develop on their own, at their own pace. Okay, we got it. Thank you.
Education and our lives as human beings are not linear. That's an industrial idea, that you start there and you get there. Our lives, if they're anything, are cyclical and kind of recursive. There are moments of growth, there are seasons of personal growth and development and seasons that are fallow. And it's not over until it's actually over. And that, the very old, like the very young, still have enormous amounts to find out about themselves if the conditions are right. And I feel it's the great role of a teacher. When I was saying moving to a different metaphor, an organic metaphor, I think it's going from an industrial metaphor to back to an agricultural one. Because if you think of a great gardener, great farmer, depends upon plants growing under their care. Otherwise, they're out of business. But the irony is that every farmer and gardener knows that you cannot make a plant grow. You cannot do that. You don't stick the roots on and paint the petals and attach the leaves. The plant grows itself. What you do is provide the conditions for growth. And great farmers know what the conditions are and bad ones don't. Great teachers know what the conditions of growth are and bad ones don't. And with bad teaching, all this potential of students shrivels in the face of it. With great teaching, all this stuff starts to flourish and to flower. And that, to me, is the great gift of teaching, to recognize that growth is possible at any time. Like in Death Valley, in the most deathless place on earth, there's life there, if you know what the conditions are. And the great challenge for teaching, I think, is not just to know your discipline, but to know your students, and to know what the pedagogical ratio is that will make them flourish and become the best thing they can be. And I think that it's not just something for the young, and increasingly it's something that we should see as intergenerational, rather than just something that happens at the beginning of our lives. It should endure throughout the whole of it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sir.
Wasn't it nice of him to sum up what we're saying for us? And what a beautiful way of putting it. I've always enjoyed the things that he has to say. He's got several really excellent books out too about developing that creativity in our students. And I love his connections to gardening.
Yeah, me too.
So as we think about as we reflect on our growth, hopefully we have grown today, and we've talked about making that comparison between teaching and gardening. Perhaps a thought that doesn't normally come to us, and yet when we really give it some thought, it definitely is a metaphor that is very, very appropriate.
Yeah. And it goes back to the idea of building the environment for your students to develop, to reach their full potential. So these are those conditions for growth and change. So change and transformation are essential ingredients also here in this process. And we talked about that today.
And when we also shared those ideas about things that we do to grow and how we embrace the idea of change.
And finally, for change to happen, time needs to be there for that potential to develop. So we also talked about time as potential for growth.
Yeah, teaching does not happen overnight. I always feel sorry for the students that are in a class that I teach the first semester that I teach, and I always feel like they didn't get really the best that I had to offer. But so we grow over time, we reflect, we look back on what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the idea of letting the seasons unfold. Each season brings something different.
Yeah, and his comment about we can't make a plant grow, we just have to provide the conditions to cause it to flourish.
Absolutely.
This is the listing of the references that we used in some of this information that we wanted to share with you. And we have coming soon to a garden near you.
So next Monday, we're off. So there will be no workshop on Monday.
The following Friday, we will be doing one on, we're continuing our CEL Hit Parade, although today was one of those too. We didn't even do our music because today was Garden Party, Ricky Nelson's 1985 tune for Garden Party. But next Friday will be, I heard it through the grapevine, the professional development. So thinking about discussion boards and how to really make them an effective component of our class, looking at some of the research on the ways of making them really, really a strong piece of it.
And then Monday, we will have, Monday, September 12th, we will have a party. We will have our blueprint party. And since we're going to be modeling how to use your blueprint with Canvas, we're going to be showing step by step how we recommend the blueprint to be used so that we map out the full progress of your course.
And then the following Friday on the 16th, we're going to be doing, again, our hit parade, Let's Stay Together, thinking about the most effective ways that we can use group projects with our courses. Collaborative teaching and collaboration is such a key part of our whole society that we want to instill that in our students now as far as being able to work effectively in groups. So we have quite a nice lineup coming for you. Thank you for joining us today. The Google slide will be continued to be available if you wish to add to it, and you may go back and see what others have put, and we'll continue to see what the growing tools that we have.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.